placer.
Great to have you here.
Oh
Great to be
my
here.
gosh. So we were just talking about the minimum wage.
I saw that.
Are you allowed to even have an opinion about the
know.
minimum wage?
Well, I'm always in favor of increasing the minimum wage.
Yeah. Of people having a life and not just working day in and day out, and some folks working 17 jobs. And I would agree. So you are making all of us proud.
Oh, thank
I say
you.
us as a proud Bronxite and a proud Boricua.
Bronx.
So you went from the Bronx to boardrooms. I mean, you were moving at the speed of light, right? Did you ever have a chance to stop and say, "Wow, I've really accomplished something," or are you doing that now?
I'm doing that now. I mean, I think when you're young, you're going a mile a minute. You think you're not going to get there, and you go at a speed that's unnatural.
Yeah.
I would agree.
You talk in your book about growing up in the Bronx, about being surrounded by family, about your parents being able to purchase their first house for $23,000. That's not even a down payment today. That's barely half of a down payment today. How did your family influence you to go out in the world, reject stereotypes, reject limitations, and just be a trailblazer?
I mean, I think part of it is that you're just afraid to disappoint them, right? My parents came here from Puerto Rico. They were very young. My mother was 12. My father was 18. My grandfather came, and toiled and, in dishwashing and stuff until he could save up enough money, like, to buy a bodega. So you always had this sense that you had to be successful. Right. And even though they couldn't help you with, like, a job like media, when I got my first job at CBS Radio, I got on the overnight shift, and my parents were like, "But you went to college. Why do you have to work nights?" And I had to explain to them that news is 24 hours. They're like, "Why would you want to do that?"
Right. I know it is kind of funny.
It is interesting too, because your grandfather comes and wash dishes, so you don't
so
have
you
to
don't
work
have to
overnight.
wake up at midnight.
Like, what are you doing?
And so years later, I'd be having business meetings in these breakfast rooms, like the Columbia Club or University Club, and that's the kind of club he worked in. And so I was always conscious of who was working there and, what they were toiling for. And they're toiling for us, for the next generation.
Right. You have such an incredible history in journalism. You just mentioned CBS Radio, El Diario La Prensa. I mean, you were heading that up. What was that experience like for you, and how did it align with your work in state government?
Oh, I loved it. I loved being in media. I was a Room 9 reporter in the early 80s. And so that was my favorite job. I made the least money, but I was so happy. And what I loved about being at El Diario is even on the worst day, on the worst news day, or on the worst day, that you're having, your reader is someone who you feel connected to, right? Because they're like your grandparents, they're like your family, and they depended on us, to kind of make sense of life in New York City for them.
Yeah, we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11. You obviously covered that there. We saw the headline of Katrina there as well. How has covering those events, those really iconic events, sort of shaped how you see your role when it comes to government? Because you see these challenges, you see these disasters, and then you work in government and you think, I want to prepare New York for the best, but also for the worst.
Yes, and that's a great question, because we always felt at El Diario that we had a part of the story, right? So you have 9/11, and everyone's covering the big thing, but we focused on all those Latinos who worked there, and some of them were anonymous, right? They worked in the kitchens and stuff, and we always tried to find that kind of Latino angle and help people access the information that that is needed. And the same for kind of all the disasters, giving people, so you report the news, but then you also help people navigate through how you clean bodies, how you do
giving folks context, because Latinos make up such a huge portion of New York City, and to have a voice of authority speaking directly to them is a large responsibility. But also rewarding.
It is, and this is why I wrote the book. I wanted people to know a Bronx story that was different than what they used to, but also my career almost mirrors, right, this incredible growth in the Latino community and battles that we have. When I tell people today that we had to battle in the 80s to get a Latino appointed to the Board of Ed, they almost don't believe me, because we were already half of the school system. So I wanted to write the book. I wanted to write about this New York story that hasn't been told.
That's right.
You went from, writing about and being a journalist about New York and New York policy to being someone who helped craft New York policy.
Yes.
You made this pivot, you became Secretary of State. What was that change like to you, and how have you brought what you learned growing up in the Bronx and what you learned in the newspaper business to that job.
Yes, thank you. Because you asked before, and that's the answer. But yes, my experience in government, which I've been in government now for 10 years, has been so enriched by my experience in journalism and both by serving communities that are sometimes disenfranchised, right? And so when because government, we try to do things when we have a program, we're like, let's do 10 cities. And sometimes you have to pilot things and see where they work, because everything in Buffalo is not the same as everything in the Bronx or Utica for that matter. So my experience, all that I learned, in journalism has really become really important in my being at the tables in government when we're deciding what do we want to do for the state. Well, let's look at the communities and what they need. So we're living right now in historic low crime rates, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in a neighborhood where crime is rampant, you don't feel that historic low. And so when we're at the table, I feel when I'm at the table, I'm able to bring to bear the communities that are not often seen. Let's go talk to people. Let's talk to faith leaders. Let's roll this out in a way that has credibility, because we talk to people in the community. And the way that we have brought crime rates down, we at DCJS, we fund, law enforcement, but every time we talk to law enforcement, we have community at the table, right? The neighborhoods, the people representing that community, so that you can't, the police departments can't do that alone. We need community folks.
Can't do it in a silo. You need everybody at the table, and the table is lucky that you are there. And we thank you so much for sharing your story with us and writing this book, Bronx Attitude. Fantastic title, by the way. You can get your hands on a copy of Rosanna's book, Bronx Attitude, due out next Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you.